If I was to yawn, I bet most people watching this would want to yawn. I see them in the workshops go, if you see somebody smile, you want to smile back. You see somebody sad, you're crying, you might think, oh, they're sad, and you feel a bit sad. So with anxiety and managing anxiety, it is about the slower you breathe, the slower your heart, the slower your head. Now, if you're feeling in a moment where you're anxious, as opposed to anxiety, if you're anxious, in other words, that first thought comes, all I want people to do is to take a big, deep breath and sigh. How do you get somebody off a bridge? How do you get, they're standing on the wrong side? I had one where a guy was sitting in his car and he's holding a knife to his stomach and he's got it pushed on the steering wheel. And so long story short, was going to be arrested and for molesting his children.
Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Bites. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons. My guest today, Lance Burdett, is a former construction manager turned crisis negotiator, spending 22 years with New Zealand Police, 13 as a crisis negotiator, training with elite units across 4 countries, including the FBI. He's worked with police, military, emergency services, and intelligence agencies. Lance holds a master's degree in terrorism, safety, and security, plus diplomas in positive psychology and well-being, business and policing. He's the best-selling published author of Behind the Tape, Dark Side of the Brain, and Anxiety is a Worry. A regular media contributor, Lance blends tactical expertise with deep psychological insight, bringing practical and effective techniques, always leaving people wanting more. Lance, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Doug. It's great to be with you, and thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and we had a chat a week or so ago, and I'm looking forward to this one. It's very enjoyable. So you spent years in situations where a wrong read could cost lives. How did you learn to distinguish between genuine intuition and your brain just trying to keep you safe through fear?
What a great question to start with. I couldn't. I couldn't. I know that stuff now, Doug, right? So I work in neuroscience. Our programs are based in neuroscience and how the brain works. But at the time, it was more good luck, trial and error, and a whole lot of stuff. So there was a lot of intuition in the work that I did, a heck of a lot. And when you said that, it took me back to a memory. A couple of times it's happened. So as a sergeant, a uniformed sergeant, we don't have firearms. We don't carry firearms in New Zealand. And I believe it or not, I was at home picking up my lunch, and a call come over the radio. And for some weird reason, I thought I was showing off. I jumped in the car and red and blue lighted from home and got there pretty quickly. And it turned out that somebody had taken to somebody else with an axe. And it turned out, they had an accident. And so they thought it was a vehicle crash. That's how it came through. But I just knew something was wrong. And to this day, I still don't know why. I knew. And that's happened a number of times. I've turned up at another job where ambos had come and at a job, and they were sitting outside, relaxed and sitting on note. Because I was an inspector, so commissioned officer, I had all the firearms in the boot, and I'd turn up at all the big jobs. And they're sitting there and they're talking. They said, "Oh, there's some mention of a knife and a bit of blood. I think the guy's cut himself." And I just again, it was just like, I don't know. I said, "Well, hang on, why don't we don't know. We're walking into. You're sitting outside, so there's got to be something about this." So there's a dog handler and another sergeant there. So I said, "Can you get your dog? We'll go in." And as soon as I opened the door, we could look straight into the bathroom, and you could just see blood on the wall, over the walls. That's not someone just cutting themselves. And we walked in, and he'd been chopping somebody up and putting them in. Sorry to be so graphic. But he'd cut himself while doing so, and he's sitting on the bed in his underwear and his white jockeys, covered in blood with a tea towel wrapped around his hand. And he said, and there's a knife, like a butcher's knife beside him. And he said, there, and he pointed, and I looked and I went, and for some reason, my brain just, I don't see it. I don't want to see it. I don't want to go to a psychologist to see what did I miss. It's buried way back there, you know? And so these things come on occasion, and we think that we are behaving logically. We think that we are, but we're not. There's something about our brain, a part of our brain that instinctively knows, and we fight it because that can't be real. That to me sounds like woo-woo. And in the world where I work these days, intuition is an actual thing. It's more about we are emotionally connected, right? Because of the limbic system. So that's how our brain. So I took, and I've been doing this for, I don't know how long now, 30 years, but certainly in my work I've been doing in the last 12 years, it's really become apparent that intuition is feelings. It's a real thing. And in fact, I've just written down before we're coming on that I'm going to do a post on it about the gut-brain-heart connection and how it works, and we don't even know it. Sometimes we make a decision and we're thinking, oh, I'm acting logically, and no, you're not. You're acting passionately. We're an animal who's emotional and picks up. Do you know, Doug, when we are even talking here with you, as we did last week, I knew there was a connection there, right? So it's not even the feeling, it's we pick up on people's facial expressions is the big one. We pick up on where their eyes go. We pick up on their body language without even realizing it. And there's an immediate connection. So we've trained over thousands of years to pick up on these things. And now we don't see it for what it really is. We think, oh, I just kind of knew, or it was just instinctive, or we make excuses for who we really are. We're an animal who senses other people, who can read other people. How many times have you've been talking with somebody and you feel like they're going to cry, or you can tell something's not right? Right. So over time, I've learned to develop that. And this is what people who are advanced developers do when they are talking with people. Oh, I sense there's somebody in the room and all they're doing is picking up on your language, your body language, and they use your little indicators that know, the little micro expressions that are around our mouth and eyes. They've trained themselves to do it. I can walk into a room, see a whole lot of people, and know who's struggling.
Yeah. It was funny you mentioned that. Yeah, I live on acreage, so my neighbour across the road, you see him drive past, but you never see them because their house is not visible at all. But he was in his front yard yesterday, and I wandered over, had a chat with him, and he's mid-70s, and we're talking for a long. I knew it was going to be a long conversation. And after about an hour, I said, "How are you actually going? Like physically now?" Because he's 75. And he's, oh, I've got this, I got that, I got this, I got that, da-da-da-da-da, like all these physical ailments. And then he kept sort of apologizing, saying, oh, sorry to dump all this stuff on. I said, no, it's fine, it's fine. Mm. And then all of a sudden, I had the urge, and we've never more than shook hands before. We've never hugged each other. Yeah, I only see him 3 times a year to talk to. It's not like I know him that well. But I had this sudden urge to put my hand up on his upper arm on his shoulder, but I didn't. And about a second or two later, he put his hand onto my shoulder. Mm. And it was like, wow, like 2 seconds ago, I had the urge to do that to you because it was right at a point where he was, he was sharing like some intimate stuff with me.
Yeah,
it really was. And and then so as soon as he did it, I did it back. And it was, I knew it was, the physical thing had already happened. Before it did happen, and it was,
There's logic to all this, right? So this is what, look, Doug, we talked about this. I'm the biggest cynic in the world. You better convince me and convince me and convince me some more and show me the data, give me the science, give me the facts. I'm that sort of guy. I'm the one that you don't want in the room. Where did this come from? I'm that guy. We have a true connection with each other. And as I say, in the work that I picked it up when I was a crisis negotiator. I could pick up, so I had depression. Now, when we all go through struggles, our brain rewires. Our brain opens up parts that were previously lost or not connected to. And when that happens, empathy suddenly arrives. It's always been there, but all of a sudden, what we forced away is now there. And just recently, I did a TED talk on why we need to cry more. And the whole premise, well, the title was to get people to come along and to get them going, what? And particularly men. I didn't have that in the title, but that's where it was aimed at. Now, what happened originally? Humans are originally designed to be intuitive, to know that I don't go down to that river. I shouldn't go there because it doesn't feel right. Right? That doesn't seem right. It doesn't. We were good at that. There was nothing around us, and that's how we survived. Then come along Stoicism, which was great if it was at what it was supposed to be, which was don't let your emotions control you, which came to be past that it was control your emotions. So it was wrongly interpreted over history because of a number of things. Now, this is not for everybody. Cultures are different, right? Culture is a big thing, but certainly for European, mainly men of those days, before that, 3,000 years ago, we cried. Vikings, there's writings of it. Norwegian literature is just filled with, and we shed tears together. And that's how it was. And then Stoicism, because we started to learn to suppress emotions. And I saw a photograph the other day of me. A short story is I was interviewed for a magazine over here, and I had to provide a few photos of me as a younger person. And I wasn't home, so my wife gave them a couple, and I came home, and here's me with a school photo. The school photos we all got by ourselves, holding a pencil in our hand and sitting up in this fake smile. And I looked at it and I went, there's something wrong. Oh, I'm holding the pencil in my right hand. I'm left-handed. And I'm old, but not that old. Early times where everyone was forced to use their left hand because it was believed that, if you're left-handed, you're, I don't know, witchcraft or something, just that weird history that we had back then. And so somebody leaned forward and pulled the pencil out of my left hand and put it into my right hand and said, we all write with our right hand. And I went, oh no, we all hold the pencil with our right hand, that's right. And I thought it meant I had to learn to write with this hand forever. And so I started to tear up as a 6-year-old. And I can remember it. It was just like it was fresh. And I don't see the people, but I just know what happened. And and they said, don't cry, it's your photo. And I I remember I wanted to go home. I wanted to see Mum. I wanted to go and hide in my cave. And so I decided to do that post on this, why we need to. So we learn to suppress who we truly are because we need to conform. Now, there's a whole lot of other things like world wars come along. There's a whole history of it. But true Stoicism is pause, question your thoughts, which is what intuition is. Respond according to your values, which means we have to take action, and always remember that other people matter. In other words, don't be a dick. Don't be respectful to others. Now, wouldn't that be a great place to be in? But because of that misinterpretation, or they don't say that, it's just because it was interpreted that way, but I know it's a misrepresentation. We started to conform. Why did we conform? Not because of that. It's because if you stood out, you were seen as danger. Our brain is wired to look for danger on two things. One, our past, and two, anything that is out of the ordinary. So again, I come back to what your question at the start. How did you know that something? How did you, your intuition? What were you thinking about? So going back, we know that things aren't right. So because you turn up at the job, and I turned up at this, what are these two ambulance guys nice and relaxed for? But yet they won't go in. So it was a logical decision, but based on it was different. It was most ambos will not be sitting on the fence. They stand there and they've got their gear and they're ready to go in. You clear the way, we're going through. They didn't. So it was different, right? So this is how we learn to pick up on danger. And as a species, we are emotional. We are connected with our heart, I guess, but it's actually, the facial expressions as well. And, not the vibe. We'll talk about the vibe and the woo-woo. And so because of that, we want to be around people we want to be around. So take our schooling, sit up straight, don't cry. No, you must, at lunchtime, I want you to draw a picture of a house. That's a dog. I don't care if every house should have a dog. I want you to draw a picture so we can learn to do these things to not stand out. And so we conform to the groups that we are with. And what we're doing is suppressing who we truly are. But everyone I've spoken to, and when I started doing our workshops, I'm bringing this into the workshops, and I see people crying. I see their face change. I just see the body language. And they sit up and they go, I want to listen to this because I have that same feeling sometimes that I really need to. Now, when you suppress your emotions, Doug, you end up causing a stress load in the physiological body, but you also end up, the cognitive and emotional load in our brain becomes such that we become fatigued very quickly because the brain is thinking about pushing what should naturally come out. And so going back to Stoicism, that's why it says you need to act, not react. That's what it meant. You respond according to your values. And we all have values of connection, caring, compassion, and all that sort of stuff. So that's, they're all connected and interconnected to where we are today, where we don't have enough. And I heard somebody, I won't mention him, he makes electric cars, talking about we've got way too much of this emotion stuff in the world. We've got way too much, we need to be more determined and dogged, and, the world doesn't need empathy. Well, I'll tell you, Doug, the world needs more empathy now than ever before.
It sure does. There's so many people out there hurting. And, I was on a call a couple of days ago with my men's group, and one of the guys was living where things are very challenging at the moment. And yeah, it was concerning to see how he'd been affected by his environment of recent times. And it was like, wow, how blessed am I to live where I am and have the influences and forces around you constantly that other people do have. Yeah, no, it's yeah. So some of the stuff you're talking there, because like 43 years ago, I joined the fire service. I was barely turned 19, became a professional firefighter, and I think you joined the police in your mid-30s-ish. I think was it?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was, I'd done a 4-year apprenticeship, so I had some, motor skills, but and some experience with people, but boy, starting to respond to pretty serious emergencies, like the anxiety levels and stuff like that. So I know I was too young to join when I did, but that they had an age limit there. You could only join if you were between 18 and 30. 30 was the cutoff. Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, I know. And most of the guys in my group were sort of in the over 25, and I'm the kid of the group. And I can still vividly remember responding to my first fire, and like 4 o'clock in the morning, like an apartment blazing, thick black smoke billowing out, and entering it on my own because short-staffed, not hardly any. 40 years ago there wasn't the crews available. And here I am. It was not a fun time. So we'll talk about the word anxiety for a bit. Yeah. And with your, recent studies in the last 10, 15 years, dealing with anxiety in any situation, whether it's work or personal or that sort of thing. Any advice you have for and interpreting the difference between intuition and anxiety?
Yeah, so a lot has to do with our amygdala, right? So our amygdala responsible for our fight or flight. Whenever we see danger, whenever we perceive danger, we don't have to necessarily see it. So the true definition of anxiety is worried thoughts. Now, in our modern world, we are worrying more than ever. In fact, I'm convinced children are born with anxiety. I know they're not, but it just seems to be that way. And yet the same with ADHD, the same with autism. There seems to be more of it. And in fact, there is. And it's multifaceted. But the biggest thing is our brain has changed over time and will continue to change, as it always is. It always has been that way. But it's advancing way faster than our brain, our prehistoric brain, can keep up with. And so that's causing a lot of it. We're now hypervigilant. Now, the amygdala, when it becomes super active, it can grow. So they're clusters of neurotransmitters in the shape of almonds, and there's one on either lobe of our head. So when we sense danger, or when we perceive, or when we start to think, or when we start to worry, they enlarge slightly. And so they become this superpower. They can pick up on things, but not necessarily intuition. It picks up more on instinct in that case than intuition. So instinct is self-survival. Intuition, and again, you can't quote me on this because I've only just thought of it like an hour ago as I was pondering, why do I always end my workshops with always in tough times go with your heart and not your head? And I went, well, Lance, where's the science? And I've been saying that for, 12, 13 years. It's that sort of just to get the emotional connection at the end. But it's a real thing. It has to be a real thing. And so I'm going to be doing some work on it. But it seems to be that intuition, they talk about gut instinct a lot. Well, gut is connected to the brain. And we know that when the brain is activated and going into that self-survival mode, the microbiomes in our stomach start activating, which gives us that sickly sense, that sickly feeling. And sometimes we don't actually have to know it. It's just, again, that intuition. We get that feeling. But what causes that feeling? So it's not gut instinct. Your gut has got no ability to pick up on senses around you. It's from the senses we have, the biggest ones, eyes, ears, the hearing, smell, sense. We pick up on those things, and we pick up on things that are different. Then the gut comes in. Does that kind of make sense? Mm-hmm. That's the way I see it at the moment. So what's the role of the heart? The role of the heart is to make sure you stay safe, is to make sure that you have empathy, is to make sure that you are connected. We are wired to connect with others, to share love and loss. Always remember that. We are wired to share love and loss. That's how we're wired. And so the love part of it is a critical part of what we tend to forget about. So again, coming back to those things, I think once the brain is activated, we are at its will. Once that emergency response happens, it's called an anchoring bias. The very first thing you ever did in an emergency, say, for example, someone yelled at you, if your very first time it ever happened to you, you yelled back, that's what you'll do again. Because it worked last time. So the brain, we're fighting against heuristics. They are shortcuts our brain takes. And we're fighting against mirror neurons. If I was to if I was to yawn, I bet most people watching this would want to yawn. Mm. I see them in the workshops go, if you see somebody smile, you want to smile back. You see somebody sad, you're crying, you might think, oh, they're sad, and you feel a bit sad. And so and we're fighting ourselves simply because we changed who we were. We're wired to, and I ask people this in the workshop to show them how they're wired. I ask 3 questions to show them that we care more for others than ourselves. And so the questions are, I want you to think of one thing you're grateful for in your work life other than the fact that you've got a job. That's the default. I want you to think of one thing you're grateful for in your personal life. And I want you to think of one thing you're grateful for about yourself. Most people, they think of either the people they work with, their colleagues, or the people they help. It's always someone else. unless you've done some work on yourself, right? And then there'll always be one that goes, and then I follow it by, unless you've done some work on yourself, and then they go, oh, which is the right thing to do. For personal life, most people think of their family, some of their friends, someone else. I didn't ask that question. I said, what are you grateful for in your personal life? But the big one is about yourself. How many of you had to stop for a moment and go, and you thought, right? And so the brain, when you think, will put something in there. And most people come up with, I call it the I'm happy, I'm alive, I'm here, I'm talking, I'm. It fills in the blank. So that's how our brain works. We're wired more to help others. And when it comes to ourselves, we take a shortcut. And so we need to start really taking that pause. Take a pause, stop for a moment, and breathe out. Now, breathing has a lot to do with our thoughts. So with anxiety and managing anxiety, it is about the slower you breathe, the slower your heart, the slower your head. Now, if you're feeling in a moment where you're anxious, as opposed to anxiety, if you're anxious, in other words, that first thought comes, all I want people to do is to take a big, deep breath and sigh. So if you're okay with that, we'll do it together, and the people that are watching or listening can do it too. So big, deep breath and go. Sigh. Now try and think of something. Apart from food or what you love dearly, there's not much else there. And now you're back in the room, right? So when we take a big, deep breath, we inflate the alveoli in our lungs. When we sigh, it compresses out and gets rid of all the carbon dioxide. And our next breath, we're back in the game and we're connected to our prefrontal cortex. There's nothing else that will do it. A physiological sigh, there's nothing else that will clear your head of that. If you happen to be in a situation where you're in front of somebody, sighing doesn't work. So all you do is breathe out slowly. If you keep breathing out slowly and keep breathing out and keep breathing out, and now you'll be calm. When you breathe out, your heart rate goes down. When we breathe out, our heart rate goes up. When in doubt, breathe out. That's where these sayings are all connected with something, right? But the best one is I call it the psychological. It puts you into the alpha zone where you breathe in slowly for 6 seconds, breathe out for 6 seconds, and just get into that. But don't count when you're doing it. Have a phone for the first minute to just beep or tap or whatever, and you do that for 1 minute. Then you do it in silence. If you count, and these breathing techniques are great for count when you count, but you've got to remember that when you're counting, your brain is engaged. To become fully calm, to control anxiety, we have to try and stop thinking. And the ultimate of that, of course, is when we start getting into mindfulness and yoga, meditation. Meditation's fantastic. That can actually repair some parts of the brain if it's done properly. Yeah, I mean, you will always think, and that's why meditation says if you have a thought come while you're doing the breathing, just let it go. Just let it wash through you and let it go. Because if you force it, and this is what people are doing, forcing things, right? So another little, I'm naughty in my workshops. Another thing I say is, right, I don't want any of you to blink. And you'll see them, their eyes straight away, they become large and they're like, huh. Well, go on then, blink, get it out the way. And, as soon as you tell your brain not to do something, it wants to do it. So when you understand all of these things, right, it says don't go into that building on fire. There's black smoke coming out and you won't be able to handle this. And you're going on alone. What the hell's wrong with you? Right? And so we go in scared, whereas all I got to do is keep low. I've got my training, but we forget that. I'm ready for this. I'm young. You watch me. I'll show these old fellas and girls and boys and what would they know? That's what we should be doing. And that's how we control it. So learning to control anxiety is the start. Not learning to control our worries. Learning to control our breathing, which the body has a mechanic system. The faster we breathe, the faster our heart, the faster we think. Slow your breathing, slows your heart, slows your head. So if we learn to deal with anxiety that way, yes, we've all got worries, but why can't our young do this? Well, they've got to be shown. And they've got a lot more going on in their heads than anyone else has, simply because they have more information at their fingertips, i.e. technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Just going back to something you said earlier, you were doing the facial expressions, if you yawn or things like that, and mirror and that. It just sparked off in me. I've done a little bit of face reading, ancient Chinese face reading training, and the teacher in that, she reminded us of something. She said, for our students, she said, be very, very wary of getting plastic surgery. As you age, if you decide to go and get, chin tucks and all these sorts of things, she said, scientifically, they've proven that if you're shown an image of something that's not nice, someone who's a car accident, a bad injury, or you're watching a short video of something, someone falling off their bike, you will automatically have an emotional response to it, and it shows in your face. So she said, people now who have serious plastic surgery on their face, they're tightening all of these points up, and they are no longer able to physically show those same emotions on their face physically.
100%.
And it then disconnects the emotion and the empathy that they had for people, and they know they are now, their personality changes, and they no longer care as much about other people.
Wow.
Yes, because they physically cannot connect that physical thing. And there are certain parts of the face, I won't go into which ones, but if people have, as they age, and you can only get these wrinkles in this location as you get older, because it's a lifetime of genuinely smiling. And it's not around the mouth. And and not everybody has this. There's only a certain part
around the eyes.
Yes. And they have these particular lines. And it's been proven that those people are trusted subconsciously by far more people.
I can tell you that in my work that's exactly right. We look around the eyes and around the mouth, but mainly around the mouth, because mask wearing days we couldn't read body language, right? But the eyes. So I have those, and they are crow's feet.
Yes, exactly.
To the point where I squint and smile, but usually squinting more than smiling, so much that they stand out because they are the tan skin and they are white. 100%. That's it.
Apparently, you can only get those crow's feet from genuinely smiling for decades. And they come, so there's, but so people listening, you start thinking, I'm going to go and get a chin tuck or whatever to take the wrinkles away. The wrinkles are there for a reason. They're from
to show you're wise.
They connect to your emotions.
They do. They
experience
connect. They connect to nerves.
Yeah.
Right? Facial nerves are a very important part, because that's how we read people. That's how we read people. We can see their expressions. Do they look angry? Well, they could be about to attack me. So that's why it's that we learn to read. But some of us have lost that ability. I'd had to retrain myself to get back to that ability.
Yeah. When you were talking before too about, you're saying you're young, you go on your first fire, you've got your training, you're young, you're fit, you can do it. The trouble was, for 4 months, I had drilled into me, when you put breathing apparatus on and you enter a physical structural building that's on fire, you always have two of you, no matter what. So 100% of my training was two of us going into this dark environment, searching, everything strange. And now all of a sudden, my first real incident, 4 a.m., I'm on my own. And I'm like, oh, shit. Well, it's an apartment building, and the fire hose reel, there's a 30-odd meter hose there. The door to the apartment's open, thick black smoke billowing out, and that hose is inside the apartments. So somebody, the occupants, have already, and I'm thinking, are they unconscious or dead on the ground at the other end of this hose? It was, but anyway,
pretty scary stuff, really.
It was, because if I had someone with me, I would have been looking to them for the lead, because you've been here longer than me, I'll follow you in, you lead the way.
And keep me safe. That's why we all should always have somebody with us,
Yeah. But then after that, another truck, 5 minutes later, turned up, which seemed like 5 hours. And they just quickly got hold of me and they shoved me in between the two of them and jammed me in tight. And the three of us went in, then I went deep into the apartment searching. And I think they knew, like, this is Doug's first fire. Like,
it is. We're
going to make sure he's coming with us. In we go, and we're going deep in. Because I went in for a while, and it was just like so disorientating. I just had to follow the hose back out. It's like I was not going to serve any further purpose I was just going to get myself lost because of the built-up anxiety of being on my own. And
yeah, that's true. And it's designed to keep us safe, right? Same with worry. Worry is a risk management tool. That's what it's there for. All of these things are designed are designed for survival.
Yeah.
Well, we're only born with two fears, apparently: falling and loud noises.
Yeah.
And after that, we start to learn other things.
Yeah.
And we do it from whether we're watching TV, reading books, whatever it might be. So that's apparently the only two fears we have.
Yeah, but I can tell you I've developed a few more than that.
I tried to overcome my fears once. I have a fear of heights, and I was a builder. So, and in fact, working in Australia, I remember working, I don't know what it is, 150, 200 feet. So I don't know what that was. It was in meters these days, but, several floors up. And it was actually in a power station, and Bayswater Power Station it's called in New South Wales. And I was working up on the top floors, right? So I was always scared of heights. But then I thought, you know what? And I'd seen people skydive. I thought, that looks easy. Look at the fun they're having and the smiles. So Lance decides to go and do a few skydives and get used to jumping out of planes. And the best jump I ever had was when I decided it was going to be my last, and I was so relaxed getting out thinking this is the last one. So don't fight, don't push against your brain. Don't force it. It's about taking small steps. And the same with anxiety, it's about taking small steps. Just doing one small thing a day. And again, the research is overwhelming on this. If you do make one small change a day, whatever it might be just instead of eating 5 bits of chocolate, eat 4. It could be instead of going for, I don't know, a 2-kilometer run or walk, maybe just go 2.1. And if you do these little changes, it has such a big impact on you, and you remember them. And each time you recognize it, you get dopamine, and dopamine's the only hormone, neurotransmitter, whatever you want to call it, that there's different names for it, that reinforces that pathway. And that's how we change our patterns, by just making very small little incremental changes. Has the biggest impact on you. Amazing. But we go like a bull at a gate, trying to overcome these things. And that adds to it. The old story of get straight back on the horse after it's thrown you off should be thrown out and dismissed. It is wrong and causes harm. That's called flooding and must only ever be done in the skills of a psychologist. Yeah. So fella, get back in there. That's all right. We'll got you. We'll hold the hose. You just give us a shout, No, they did the right thing.
Yeah.
They pushed you between and said, you're safe. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It was a lot different. The right thing.
Yeah. A lot different that time. Yeah. But anyway, so,
And it was the right way to do it, right? You're safe with us, and this is how you do it.
Yeah.
Because you're stuck between them,
Yeah, exactly. So I'm curious now, when you were back in the police force, was there ever a moment in negotiations when you felt something shift before it actually happened, and you sort of you just got a sense that something was going to change, for the better or the worse before it happened?
Not really a massive change. I knew I had a connection with people, and I suspect that's because I had recently, about I think it was 12 months after becoming a crisis negotiator, I had depression. But I didn't step back. I carried on with it. And I think being in a place of struggle with somebody who's struggling, there was that immediate connection. And I think that's probably what I felt more. And I just knew that this was meant to be. There's some things that happened in the police. There was mindset changes, I have to tell you. There was things where I had this realization, but I'm not sure if I realized them at the time, Doug. More, I realize it now, looking back. And the reason I say that is because when you're in the moment, you don't really recognize it, and the impact doesn't happen until that aha moment doesn't normally come until years later when you're going back over things and you suddenly realize, oh, so that's why I did that. It's easier to see disconnected from a distance. But at the time, no, I didn't really have that shift. There's one time I remember there was a gang member. I know he was a gang member who I stopped. Anyone who hasn't got a driver's license now, every police officer will tell you this. They won't look back at the car. They won't look back at you. They just have this, and they get the white knuckle, and they just steer straight ahead as they drive past you. You know, it's like, I'm like looking at my watch. Do I want this?
It's nearly lunchtime.
Do I want? That's exactly it. I had my lunch with me, and I'm like, and it's going to go cold because you eat on the run in the police. And I was like, oh, all right. I'll just see how it goes. And in the back of the car was these two young kiddies that are his children, right? He's a Maori guy, full facial, the whole tattoo, the whole face was tattooed, and straight away I was like, he's got they have little markings that just stand out, so I knew he was that way. But he kind of had this different attitude, and I walked around his car, and he's, everything was wrong with it. The kids had seatbelts, and I said to him, can I have your driver's license? And he just kept looking straight ahead. He goes, no. I said, have you got one? He goes, no. I said, you never have one, have you? He goes, no. And I said, oh, you know what that means, right? And I looked at him, I looked at the kids, and I thought, well, I don't know what, maybe it's a shortcut, I don't know, but something happened and something switched. How did I know to say this? So I said to him, well, we're going to lock you up. You'll go before the courts. The kids will be looked after. If you haven't got one at home, we'll take them back to the police station, and we'll get somebody from social welfare to come and get them. And your car's gone. You can forget that. It's too old. It's got no warrant, no regits. It's a rubbish. And it's going to cost you a bit too, right? And I said, or you can go home. Now, as this happened, it was near my house. It was in the same street as I was. And he looked at me and he just said, are you serious? I said, yeah. I said, but here's the rules. You go home, you never drive this car again. In fact, you never drive again until you've got your license, and you look after your babies. That's what I want you to do. Your choice. I'd like to do that. He looked at me, said, good on you, mate. See you later. I said, and I live just over there. If you ever want to come and see me and say hi. And that moment of human connection, I drove away from that thinking, did I do the right or wrong thing? I should have, what if the boss finds out, that whole thing that we are programmed to do in our role. And years later, I just thinking about it, somebody asked me a question, it came back to me. I'd like to think that policing is like the other two emergency services. That is to help people, not lock them up. Now, I never saw him again. I don't know what happened. But for me, that was a whole mindset shift and going back, I became a detective, right? And I wanted to go and help people, help to find people who account, but also to help people in various roles. And I became the lead crisis negotiator for New Zealand Police. And, qualified as an FBI negotiator, and went to Darwin and attended the counter-terrorist negotiators course. I poured my life into that, of helping people. And that's where I went. I didn't give out tickets from that point forward. I didn't do any of that stuff because that's punishment. We don't learn from punishment, do we? I don't. And so that was, but that's looking back. Not at the time. I think possibly it might have been out of fear because I was by myself. I don't know. Or out of what do I do now? Or I don't know. Like you, like the young person going into a fireplace, right? Into a fire. Is it that? Well, I'd like to think it was that I had a connection with them, and I was there to help. And so, that's life at the time. They were never aha moments. I'd have great ideas come to me, so they're probably, I don't know how my brain works, because I cannot make decisions in the moment. I can't. I have ADHD. there's lots of decisions going on in my head, Doug. And it's been great having you ask questions because I can stay focused. But I go off into angles, as you'll see. And it wasn't, some things happened, like, how do you get somebody off a bridge? How do you get, they're standing on the wrong side? I had one where a guy was sitting in his car and he's holding a knife to his stomach and he's got it pushed on the steering wheel. And so long story short, it was going to be arrested and for molesting his children. And he'd somehow managed to get in his car. I've never found out why, but obviously they hadn't done their job properly. And he's in this car park and I'm there and the sun's blaring down on me, my bald head, and I'm thinking, oh. And, he said to me, don't come close. Don't come any closer. I said, I'm not going to come closer. Dude, I'm scared. He looked at me, are you scared? I said, hell yeah, you got a knife. One, you're going to hurt yourself, but you could hurt me. I'm not coming any closer. I'm back here. And again, it's that human connection, right? He sort of went like that. And so I'm trying to think, how am I going to get you? And the media were there with their cameras and you could see all that. And there was 2 cops who were there to arrest him, finally caught up with their guns out. I'm trying to negotiate here and you've got your guns out. I can run faster than he could get out of the car, just dumb stuff. And I said, so we looked for the hook. I said, what's keep you going, mate? What's keep you going? He says, my kids. And I went, oh, where do you go from there? The kids he's been molesting. Mm. So I said, you're about to be arrested for what you've done, right? And there's no way you're getting out of that. He said, I know. And I said, but I tell you what, while you're in there, you could probably get some help, right? Because if you truly love your kids, you'll get yourself better and you'll apologize and you'll make up to them and you will, in fact, go even further than that. You'll go out of your way and become part of a group to tell people why. There's your challenge. So these things just come to you, these ideas. And he said, okay, gotcha. And he got, and then you move out the way and the cops come in and slam on the ground and knee in the back of the neck and undo all the good work you've done at that point. But it comes to me. So again, I don't know, is it intuition? Well, I think it's empathy. I think I've just got one of those people who've got a big heart, right? It's not sensitive. Now, a lot of people will say that too, right? Oh, you're just too sensitive. Well, no, what it means is you care. You care more. People with big hearts care a lot and they get hurt a lot because they care too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting what you said before about, ambulance, apart from attending people's, they offer first aid courses, so they're helping. Mm. Fire service, we do fire prevention. So we go out and I now work for a private company a couple of days a week as a fire safety advisor. And when I was in the fire service, I had a desk job for years doing fire prevention, assessing building plans for new construction and that sort of thing. And I do remember, and even now, now I have no authority on my fire audits on all these high-rise buildings on the Gold Coast and factories and stuff are advice. But when I was in the fire service, I could write, 25 years ago, I could write a $1,850 on-the-spot fine.
Wow.
Yeah, I never wrote one because we were taught, as you would know, if it gets challenged, the only way it can be sorted out is in court. And so it was like, do you really want to go to court? But I remember many times in that similar situation to you, where you had that man, with no driver's license, unregistered vehicle, where there's some, there's certain things wrong in the building, fire safety wise, that are very minor, like whatever. But occasionally there would be some pretty serious things, and you'd be like, I've got the building owner, and it might be a nightclub in Surfers Paradise, that 6 nights a week, overcrowds, everything like that. And you sort of get, and with those guys, we weren't gentle. We would, because they've got 800 people in a building, there should be 400 people in there. Mm. And so if there's an emergency, there's big problems. But, there was times when I would just get empathetic and just say to them, all right, guys, I showed you the 12 little problems over here. they're relatively minor. But over here are two big things. I should be writing you a fine right now because we were here a month ago and you still haven't got it done. What's the chances of you, before you open tonight, getting this sorted out, like major? And something else, and they're like, and I'm intimidated by these people because these aren't your average everyday business owner. Some of them are like unusual characters, and they own 6 nightclubs, and they've got into these positions. They've got reputations, and just say to them, look, I'm supposed to write a fine right now, but what do you reckon? And I've shown some empathy, and then and they're doing their business for making money, and they know I'm going to write an $1,800 fine, and they're like, all right, we'll do it. And then, and you're like, okay, good. And end of the day, if there's an emergency in the building that night, everybody will be safer. Had I written them an $1,800 fine, no one's safer because they're just going to go, send it in the mail, like whatever. But now the building is actually safer. So fingers crossed that gentleman you talked to got his shit together and decided.
I have no doubt, I don't know what happened to, but I have no doubt. And we could go down the whole road of do prisons work? Well, no. For some people, you need them, right? When we know that, but it's not the majority of people who are in there. It's just unfortunate circumstances. And so learning how to deal with people as people with a bit of empathy, that's where we learn. We didn't learn. I grew up in a school age where you got rapped on the knuckles with a ruler if you were caught doodling. Well, I've got ADHD. You ask any ADHD how they keep themselves focused, and that's by twiddling, and it's called stimming, right? That's what we do. And so did I learn? No. Did I get learned by being punished? Well, no. My brain's slightly differently, thank you, and I enjoy it. It's punishment doesn't work. It doesn't. And I just take the extreme example for those that might be thinking, yes, it does. Well, you look at Texas, the murder capital, the countries of the murder capital, they've got capital punishment. It doesn't stop you at the time. 50% of murders are crimes of passion.
Yeah, I was wondering that. What percentage,
around 50% of crimes of passion, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so, you throw those people in jail.
Well, you throw them in, and then what are you doing? Well, they're going to come out hurt, injured, knowing more how to crime. They've got the only friends they know now are those that were confined in a compressed environment. Their whole emotion contagion. You've completely changed them. You've taken any empathy they had. You've removed it.
So what do you do with someone? Say someone's an accountant. They wear a suit and tie to work every day, and they've always paid their bills, paid their mortgage. They've got 3 children. They go to church every Sunday, and something ridiculous happens, and they go crime of passion. They murder their wife, and then they just sit there sobbing with regret, like it happened. What do you do with that man now? What will society? Well,
society says you must be punished.
Yeah.
Right. But we look to Scandinavian countries where society says, yes, you're going to be punished in your free time. So you will spend the first year or 2 learning how to live in a prison. Then we're going to let you go and back to your job, but you come back each night. Right. So there's ways and means of doing things. These crimes of passion, it's very hard to find out what is a crime of passion, but for most people, you can sort of know, and you can actually put a logical factor to it. So yes, there is a need, and in fact, the person needs to be a punishment. We punish ourselves when we do things wrong. Yeah. So it's an expectation, right? There's an expectation that they're going to get punished, but it's the sort of, is it right putting them in this one? Do we have to put them in max straight away because that's the way the system works? For the first year or 2, you're in max. Did they have to? Because it was a crime of passion. Could we not put them in and we have them you've got them in Australia. I was with Witness Protection, running the arm of Witness Protection for the country. There's a particular part of a prison in New Zealand that's only for witnesses, right? So they're all the same, all together. It can be done very, very easily. That's why we put them around other people so that they can be with others who have also made that bad mistake of crime of passion. That's what we do with them. We don't put them in mainstream.
Yeah, because you become what you surround yourself with. And
You become that 100%.
yeah.
You know, and how is it? What's the recidivism rate in a coming out of prison? Something like over 90%.
Wow.
So you can't tell me, you can't convince me. And I've worked in prisons. I've trained prison negotiators. I've been negotiating in prisons. You know, the environment's not right. I hated going in there. The smell, you can smell fear, literally smell it. You know, the testosterone is just, it's got a weird smell about it. And that whole place reeks of it.
Wow.
It's just survival. It's just survival. Yeah, some people need to be there 100%, but that's, you know, not necessarily. That's how society has said it must be.
Yeah. I mean, and people have car accidents, you know, when they go to jail, you know, like someone dies in the car accident because they were being foolish or not paying attention or whatever. And I think how many times I've nearly had a car accident almost just through not paying attention, boredom, been driving for an hour and a half, just blah, blah, blah. And then you're like, oh, geez, I just got off that one, you know, we just missed or whatever. And not necessarily me causing the whole problem. I've caused a little bit of it, gone close, it's closer to and the other person's a bit closer to the center line, and we all, you know, and but we got off. It didn't happen. And
that's it. That's exactly it.
So life-changing. So it's a real big thing, the policing, and we see stuff on TV, you know, where the police wrestling people to the ground. But I tell you, I was at a fire one day where a guy was on drugs, and we turned up. And we got responded to a car on fire. And there was a car on fire in the driveway, and this guy had lit it. And he had no shirt on, and he was as biggest, muscliest dude you'd ever seen. And his eyes were like crazy looking from drugs. And he just looked at us, and we just backed off. Oh, whoa, called the police. And the first two police turned up, and they sort of looked at him, and they went, yeah. So they called for back. So there was 4 of them. And they got hold of that guy. And it was like a well-oiled machine, precision, and they got him down on the ground, and they had their foot on his side of his head and had him down on this rocky ground. And I had full empathy for the police officers, because that's exactly what needed to happen at that point. Like it had to be precision, had to be handcuffed, it had to be forceful, because he had superhuman strength at that point. He was running around with big sticks, smashing windows on the house, and really it was off, you know.
They don't feel pain. That's where that strength comes from. They don't feel pain.
Yeah. And so that one time it was like, yes, you guys just did a real good job. That was, it was
and we
definitely not over.
Places where you need to, you know, mental patients, you know, we used to, they don't do it now in New Zealand. They still haven't sorted out what they're going to do, but only if the person's, you know, in real harm or harming others, that they will turn up. But I'd turn up at these jobs, and I always just think, you know, who's inside that person? That's the way I always look at it. Who's inside that? But you just got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. All right. So if we've got a man listening right now who doesn't trust himself right now, what's the first step he could take to like help to rebuild that confidence on what's going on inside him?
Yeah, it's like a switch you have to be able to do, you know. And what I'm finding is, and I've actually asked this recently of somebody, are you at the bottom yet? And somebody said, you didn't. I said, well, that's the only way I got better. And that's the only way I fixed myself. And I liken it to, and so if somebody's listening and they're like that, they'll know. They'll go, yeah, I'm there now, Lance. And I'll say, right, go back to the basics. Right? You've got to make sure you get a good night's sleep. That's the first thing you should ever do, is go to sleep. And the only way to get a good night's sleep is to do a number of things, which we'll talk about shortly. But we can get ourselves up for here, but I don't know. It seems to be that it's like if you were injured, Doug, I'll ask you this question. I'll come back at you with a question. If you're injured and have an injury, and the doctor says to you, or physio says, you know, you got to have a couple of months off. What are you doing in a month's time? from when they said that. But yeah, having a run.
Yeah.
Get back out there having a go. And that's how we're wired.
Yeah.
We push ourselves. Right? Now, you don't have to be at the bottom, but you've got to be at a point where there's two things. You either feel, well, they go together, I guess. There's, you feel hopeless and helpless. We can feel helpless without still having hope, or we can feel hopeless, but still feel like we can help ourselves. But it's when those two things align, when we feel like I've tried everything, now I've got nowhere to go. That's the point, right? And that's the point where the brain does a brain shift. And so the way to do this is to go back to the 6 basic things of life. And anyone can do this at any time. You don't have to be at the bottom. You can be, could have been something that happened at work. And so you go back to talk, read, write, food, shelter, sleep. So the first thing is when we've got something on our mind, our brain exaggerates it. So the first thing you can do, and the way it does that is, and I used an example, you're leaving home, bit of a hurry, you got a partner at home, see ya, I'm off. And just as you close the door, you hear a voice, whatever. And you think, you wait till I get home tonight. And you close the door and off to work you go. You start having random thoughts. You've been late home quite a bit recently. You've been grumpy. Yeah. You haven't been sleeping, have you? No. Do you remember a year ago you had an argument that lasted a whole day? Yeah. Do you remember when you first met, you're a bit of a dick? Yeah. Do you remember when you were 7? Hey? The brain goes back through our memory. Is this helpful? Is this helpful? Is this helpful? The similar events. Now we've got 5 things on our mind. So that's called catastrophizing. So you've got to get it out, whatever's happening. So 1, you can write it down with a pen on paper. We're wired to write with pen on paper. Do not pick up your phone and go, I'm going to write some stuff. No. I always have one on my desk. You pick up a pad and a pen and you write stuff down because we're hardwired to do that. Or you can read information. Reading information is good. We've got a thirst for knowledge. We're born curious. But however, what the first thing you read is stuck in your head, an anchoring bias. So, if you read the wrong, if a dog could speak and say one word, what would that word be? Some people will be thinking woof because that's what they got told or read as a child. If you have a dog, you're probably thinking food or walk, the 2 things you got told when you first got a dog. So you're thinking of one of those 3 things. So be careful what you read. Talking's the best. When you talk, we are getting it out of our head. We also tell people whether or not we realize that this is how I feel. The emotion locks and blocks our memory. Our longest, strongest memories are because we were in our most emotional state. So what happened? How did you feel? That's how you do it, right? And it's in that order. Talk, read, write. Talk about what happened and how you felt. Read some information about it. I recommend examine.com as a good website to go to and use that as your search engine, and then write yourself a plan. The 3 behaviors that change is our diet. We don't feel safe at home and we don't sleep. So how do you deal with that? Right, start eating foods high in serotonin. That will lift your mood. Search that on there. And also start eating fruit because the brain craves glucose. Start eating fruit, changes the sucrose into glucose, and your brain will work better. Then home. Now, when you've had a bad day, where do you want to go to? Where's the first place you think of? And people go, the pub. No, it's not. You want to go home to bed, right? Because that's where you feel safe. But just recently, where we've been using things like lockdown, well, home's no longer our sanctuary. In the first 2 to 3 days of lockdown, most people cleaned, tidied, painted, demolished, rearranged their home. That's what we want to do. Tidy home, can sleep better. Cave. And so we go home and tidy 1 or 2 or 3 things and do that every day. Just 2 or 3 or 4 things just to go, yeah. Oh, it's starting to feel better. And then sleep. Now, sleep's critical. A couple of quick tips around sleep. Don't go to bed too early. If you go to bed too early, you're either going to wake up early or their brain's still active. I'm glad you've come to bed early. I've got a couple of questions to run by you. And how many times have we done that? So stick to your timing. That's the big one, right? If you're waking up 3 or 4 times a night, go for a walk at the end of a workday. You won't wake up 3 or 4 times a night. It means you've got too much cortisol. Have your main meal 3 hours before bedtime. 3 hours after we eat, we want to go to sleep because it's to do with the temperature change in our center core. And, right on bedtime, if you do that breathing technique I talked about before, where you breathe in and out So if people are interested in sleep, and that's the number one thing we can do for ourselves, but you've got to do some other things before that. They can go to our website and get it. It's free. We send it back, so you have to fill out your details. We delete your email. So we hold everything in house. We don't. Those automatic systems are controlled by someone in a different country, and they collect your data and they sell it to other people. So we keep it. There's a document there that doctors are giving out here in New Zealand to patients who can't sleep. It's based on neuroscience. We're happy to do it. It's 16 pages long. It will put you to sleep just reading it. It's a hell of a document. It's got some pictures if you want them, but it'll go through a whole lot of, and we're getting great feedback on that. So talk, read, write, food, shelter, sleep. Go back to the basics, change small things within your current pattern. The same with anxiety. It also works for anxiety. If you change your patterns, if you start going, somebody the other day, I heard it the other day, surfing's really good for if you've got depression. I'm like, really? You're going to put more stress on the person. Horse riding. I don't like horses. No, we're hardwired to do 6 things. Stick with your hardwiring, just change it and bring it up to date for today's world, and you'll be in a much better place.
Yeah. Yeah, the basics are always
basics are where you're going.
Yeah. We get caught with our technology and all these different things we have, but we're still human beings, and the basics are incredible. Well, you take one of them away, take food away, right? Let's see how you're feeling in 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And then take sleep away, see how you're feeling in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, or just take exercise away, sit on the couch for a week and see how you feel.
Yeah. Exactly.
You'll be having trouble sleeping, your food won't be going right, your digestive system, the whole lot, they're all interconnected because it's how we're wired. It's our hardwiring, it's the stem, the hardwiring of the stem.
Yeah, excellent. So Lance, we'll have your contact details and stuff like that in the show notes for people to access. So apart from that, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think, yes, on the subjects of men and intuition, is there anything that you need to add in?
No, not specifically. I went down a track in my book on anxiety around premonitions and things like that. Until the science is better at it, so neuroscience is brain imaging, right? So reading where the brain lights up. Until that becomes more accurate, we can guess according to what you and I have. But what I will say to people, and in fact, somebody met up with me when I did a workshop. I looked at him and I could see a good person inside him. I said to him, "You're a good man. I can see you're a good man. I can tell you're a good man." And I came out and he was walking away from me and I said, "Hey, can I just have a quick word?" And he turned around and goes, "Yeah." So I said, "I want to know a little bit more about your story." And he turned and walked away to get a cup of tea and he just kept walking. And I followed him and I thought, ooh. And he turned around and he had a tear coming down his face. And I said, "Oh, sorry, have I triggered you?" He says, No, I'll tell you one day." And so 2 days later, Lance sends him an email and goes, "Oi, what up?" So I caught up with him, and it turns out no one's ever said that to him before in his life, which it broke my heart, right? And so we're talking about it. So he says, "You're good at reading people." He said, I am a good person. There's been things that have happened to me and I've been fighting it, which is what we talked about at the start. And I said, well, all you need to do is just sit and watch people. Start there. If you get curious about something, ask them. Watch their body language. I'm terrible when I travel at an airport. I watch people, right? I just love it. But don't stare, I get told. I'm not staring, I'm examining. And it's a skill you learn. It's a skill you pick up on. These people that do all of these things where they grab you and they touch you, and they I don't know if you've seen them where they hide something somewhere. Now, I don't want, they just move you around because every time you look at it, a part of your body goes stiff. So they can actually find, that's all they're doing. All of these things, they're looking at your facial expressions and you can learn that stuff. Again, it's not woo-woo. So if you want to explore more and to become, to change some things, start watching others around you. Start talking to other people. Start listening is the big one, to what they say. We seem to be in conversations these days where we're thinking about what we can say next rather than listening to what's being said. So yeah, just start being more observant and understand your body. I'm more aware of, because I've had some injuries now, and again, it's after depression, I became more aware of my heart rate. I became more aware of adrenaline and cortisol. I become more aware of blood pressure. I can feel now when I can feel if I have something, to eat, I can feel the difference in my body. And doctors have said this to me. I've had a number of surgeries through police, injuries. You have to stay fit. And Lance doesn't want to stay fit. He wants to be super fit. And every time, they might give me something just before going into surgery. As soon as I inject, I go, oh, does that worked already? I go, yeah. It just, once you understand your body, you don't resist things. Once you understand yourself, don't resist your thoughts. Don't work against your brain, work with it. This is how we start. Learn about yourself.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Thank you for that, Lance. It's, some great stories, great examples for the men listening. It's, a whole different version. You're the first current or former police officer we've had on here, and I think it's some great info and people might have a little bit more empathy for police officers hearing that story where you wait.
Oh no, don't give them anything. Don't give them an inch. No, don't start that.
Yeah, we've got to realise that just because they got that uniform on, they're actually. I feel sorry for the police officers now. I see walking around the streets. When you talked before about you didn't carry guns, here they have these waist belts now where they've got the pepper spray, the pistol, they've got the baton, they've got 16 other things. And I'm thinking, how uncomfortable to walk around with that stuff,
and how unhuman.
Yes, extremely.
Is that?
Yeah, extremely. Yeah, they did that to the firefighters here years ago in Australia. They changed their uniform after I left, and it went from these nice blue shirts, pale blue shirt, and navy slacks into black, all black. And I wear black clothing a lot. I like T-shirts, and I like them. But these ones were not friendly. They used to look friendly before, and I'm thinking these are firefighters. They're not police officers. And
so the only colour I've done some research on this, because an organisation I work with, parking wardens, they were for council, and I first thing I said, so I went to do some de-escalation. I said, why have you all got black uniforms? I said, it's only the highest tier of responders that wear black. You're looking at the Armed Defenders Squad, you're looking at the SAS, you're looking anywhere globally, people who wear black are at the top of their, and so they're going to be a challenge to people that are out there. Who do you think you are, a cop? Right? So as soon as they've taken their uniform now and they've got this, it's a light blue, it's a very light blue with grey, I think, slacks, they don't get nothing about the uniform at all, nothing. The people that would normally come up and say something smart to them don't say it anymore, because it's, they tried for a while having stripes, for seniority. No. Oh, you think you're a sergeant, do you? So don't do that stuff, right? And so, I'm disappointed. I didn't know that was all in black, because I'm still in blue over here, and it's a good blue. It's a really good, it stands out. It's a deep blue.
Yeah, I used to
with the red badges, the red and the medals and things, it just,
yeah. I used to feel so proud. I'm glad I'd already left before they changed over, and it was. You think,
wrong colour.
Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, thanking you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Great information, and pleasure getting to know you more.
Thank you so much, Doug, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Lance. Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.